Gettysburg Museum of History Studios.
You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg, a very special episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And first of all, normally we would do this as a live stream on YouTube, but our studio computer's hard drive has fried. So we will not be doing that for the time being. However, we can still record because it's a separate device, and so that's what we're recording on right now, and you don't really care about all that technical information, but here we are. Today, I am talking with Jason Martz from Gettysburg National Military Park. This is your first time on the show, right, Jason?
Yes, sir, it is.
That is, so welcome. And I always confuse your title over there. I just say PR guy, but that's really not officially your title, I'm pretty sure.
It's not.
What?
Not. It's the formal title for me at Gettysburg and Eisenhower is Communications Specialist.
That's what it is. Communications Specialist. So Jason is the Communications Specialist over there. So whenever there's official word, whether it's in the newspapers or Facebook or whatever, it's coming from you. Website.
Yep. All of the above.
Okay.
Really, whether it be traditional media, new media, everything in between. It's usually coming from my shop.
Okay. You, I'm sure, have to deal with a lot of questions and a lot of other things that are probably common, but I know you're not going to answer this, but if I were in your position, I would get really sick of answering them. But anyway, Little Round Top is the big one, right? That everybody's talking about now.
Absolutely.
It's finally open.
Yes.
We've waited for 2 years, almost 2 years to the day. I mean,
yeah, it was just shy of 23 months.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was pretty good. We let's see, I was up there for the ribbon cutting, and I have to say that I like it. Now, I had peaks along the way because Steve Sims took me up there a couple times, and I got to see some of the progress, and so I knew kind of what to expect. And I think it looks better than I expected it to look. I didn't expect it to look bad, but it's always hard to kind of imagine something before it's actually there, especially
right.
in the woods.
Yep.
But I mean, it's really nice, and it's really easier. It's much easier to get around, I think. I can walk without any problems so far, knock on wood. But there were times the old Little Round Top that I'd twist an ankle or two, or step on a particularly pointy rock right in the ball of my foot. Not always fun. Right. Twisting an ankle, stepping off of the pavement once in a while. Mm-hmm. None of that anymore.
Right.
We have these beautiful aggregate paths. What is that stuff made of?
So you're talking about the ones that are
the aggregate,
not the concrete,
not the concrete,
the non-concrete ones. Yeah. So that's a material that is officially labeled and called stabilized aggregate.
That's right. Yeah.
Stabilized aggregate, and what it is it's two different sizes of gravel aggregate that is mixed on site, or was mixed on site. One is about the size of peas, the vegetable peas. And the other one is about the size of grape nuts, the cereal.
Okay.
Mixed on site 50-50, and it's laid down where the paths are, where the gathering areas are. And in so doing, it's done depending on how where it is on the hill. How steep is the pitch? Are we talking about that western face leading up from Devil's Den, or are we talking some flat areas? So it could be up to 4 or 5 inches thick, depending on where it is.
Okay.
And
so what if it's going uphill? It would be thicker because people are kind of digging in to move up the hill. Is that kind of the idea?
I don't know if there's necessarily any rhyme or reason to
okay.
it. I think a lot of it has to do with the geography, no matter where it is.
Okay.
Whether it's flat, a little bit of pitch, a lot of pitch.
Okay.
What we're trying to do with it though is make it a nice flat surface, and that's really where the stabilization comes in. And what that is essentially, it looks like and acts like Elmer's glue.
Yeah.
It comes out of a hose, comes out of a big 40-gallon drum right there on site, and it gets pumped out of the drum, goes through the regular garden hose. No nozzle on the end.
Really?
It's just the end of a hose, and it's kind of a watery looking Elmer's glue. They spray that down and work it in with a metal rake, let it dry, and come back and apply maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 more coats. Depending on the pitch. So the steeper it is, the more applications of this adhesive is in there. So it's not concrete,
right?
But it has a very natural look to it.
Yeah.
In fact, going back in the process, we narrowed it down to 3 different companies, and we tested it over the course of a couple months on a relatively steep section of the hill to really put it through the test. Let weather do its thing, let nature do its thing. And once we found the one that was definitely going to work for us, we then went to the company and asked for a bunch of different color samples so that we could match the natural color of the soil, the little round top, so that when visitors are there, whether you're right on top of it or maybe you're seeing it from a distance, it looks natural. It looks like it's part of Little Round Top.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of people, since it's opened, have commented, I know at least to me, that, hey, these dirt trails are great.
Well, they kind of do feel like dirt,
like
hard packed dirt.
Yeah.
Which is what's kind of cool about them.
So that's knowing that's what they're calling them, dirt trails, when they're not dirt trails.
Yeah.
It tells us that we kind of nailed it.
You chose right. So how did the reopening go? Because it was, what was the date? The 24th of June is when the ribbon cutting was, and then later that afternoon it reopened. By the way, I have to apologize. If you recall, when I was leaving the hill, I said, "What time are you announcing this so I don't do it before you?" And you said noon. And then you said to me, 12:05, you can put something out. And I said, okay. Mm-hmm. So as I was walking down the hill, I got my phone out and I did a video and I was like, oh, recognize this behind me, and saying it's open. I get in my car. I go to my YouTube Studio app on my phone. I upload it and I set it for 12:05 and I hit save. And like 3 minutes later, one of my friends texts me and he's like, "That's great news about Little Round Top." And I go, "How did you hear? It's not, this is like 11:35. I'm like, "How did you hear? It's not coming out till noon." And he's like, "It's on your YouTube channel." And I was like, "What?" So I go on my YouTube channel. I forgot to hit PM because it said AM. And so since it was after 12 a.m., it thought it could make it live right away.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I deleted it. Only 25 people saw it, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But I deleted it, and then I re-uploaded it with the correct time.
But then how many of those 25 people shared?
Told everybody?
Yeah.
Well, once I deleted it, it doesn't matter,
Oh, is that how that works?
Yeah, supposedly. But anyway, so I'm sorry about that. I was like, oh man, if he sees this, he's going to think I'm like, flouting or scoffing at his request, and that's not what I was doing. It was an accident. Anyway, how did the reopening go, though? We did it on the 24th, but, that was right before anniversary weekend. Mm-hmm. And was it? I wasn't up there. I was sequestered in the studio here. So what was it like?
It was fantastic. Everybody who just happened to be there, we opened the gates and they came back as if it was just another day.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
That's on the 24th.
Correct.
So how was it? I mean, it had to have been swamped on the anniversary days, no?
There were times where it was certainly busy, but it's we're not entirely sure how to judge the visitation so far.
Right.
It's been open for a couple of weeks. We've been kind of watching and learning how the visitors are using the space. How they're approaching the area, how they're parking, how they're getting around. just listening to their comments, having conversations with them as they're there. And again, everything's been so positive so far.
I was going to ask you, has it mostly been positive?
Absolutely. It's
I think it has been too, from what I hear.
And I think going back to where you started talking about what you saw in a few of your sneak peeks prior to us actually opening, that you could kind of get a sense for where it was going, but still couldn't see the final product. And we put out a ton of pictures over the course of the project on our website, through social media, et cetera. And there were a lot of comments that, we're not sure how this is going to look, Park Service. And then folks are getting there and they're realizing, wow, I can get everywhere now.
I mean, places that, like the Sharpshooters Monument, like all the way down there, I never went down there before.
Right.
To be honest with you, I'm not even sure if I knew that monument was there. I think I only ever went as far as the 16th Michigan.
Right. You and everybody else.
Yeah. And it's also, I like how the stone walls were kind of shored up. Not kind of, they were, straightened out and fixed. And it's funny, I don't remember exactly how everything looked prior to closing, but in some instances, I remember, I see what it looks like now, and I go, man, it was a mess before. Like at the time, I didn't think it was a mess. I was like, it was cool. It's like a battlefield, they're messy. It's supposed to be messy.
It's rough and tumble.
Yeah, right. I that's what I loved about it. But then you see how it is now, and it's like the difference between going to a regular backyard and a well manicured backyard. Like you're like, wow, okay, this is nice. I don't need this, but I like it. Right. Now, let me ask you this though: parking. Okay, there's more bus spaces. There is people who haven't been here yet or haven't been following online who are used to getting up there and parking anywhere, like on the side of the road or whatever. Can't do that anymore. Right. There's a curb there. But there are some extra parking spaces down at the bottom of the hill on Warren Avenue that we did not have before. There were pull-offs, but it wasn't really a parking space, right?
Yeah, there's... And we can kind of go road by road if you want to, and kind of go through these different spaces. But yeah, the Sykes Avenue, which is the main thoroughfare up and over Little Round Top, some folks look at pictures or maybe see it themselves and immediately think that we shrunk the width of the road. And it's actually not the case. The width of the road is basically the same as it was before. Prior to the rehab project. The big difference, though, is that everyone had gotten so used to simply being able to go off the road through and kind of park over and through what would have been rainwater gutters, the rainwater runoff gutters. And then those were level with the ground, with the shoulder. Right. So it gave the impression that the road was probably 4 to 5 feet wider than it really was, which then encouraged everyone to park on the shoulders. And we've kind of deemed the parking at the summit, which has remained exactly the same as far as automobile parking, 24 spaces on the left side, then 24 spaces now. The only difference is that 2 of them prior to the rehab were accessible, ADA, handicap. Now there's 4. Okay, so we went from 2 to 4. But all of this informal parking, so there's formal and informal, and it's that informal parking that so many people
got used to
for decades, got used to. And that just goes to how busy and how popular Little Round Top has been over the years, that really no matter how busy it was in those years leading up to the rehab, you could always find a parking space.
Yes.
Because you could always create your own parking space.
Sure.
Which, of course, then led to, and this was a bit of a snowball effect that kind of got us to this point in the first place.
Part of the erosion.
That's part of the erosion. That's part of these social trails that went straight up and down. When it rains, when when we get heavy rainstorms, when a trail like that gets worn, water rushes through it like the Grand Canyon.
Oh,
and the problem, which starts off small, gets worse and worse and worse.
I've been caught up there in a downpour, and it's amazing how quickly, in the old days, and it's amazing how quickly rivulets and down the road itself, like just rivers formed.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was, if you had like a raft or something, you probably could have had a good time going down the
I wouldn't
down the
doubt
north
that.
slope.
I wouldn't doubt that.
But it was, it's definitely so. So let me as you're saying some of these things, I'm thinking of some of the comments I've seen online, and I'm sure people are listening to this now, talking back to their speakers. So let me voice their things, and let's hear what the park's answer to it is. And the issue of parking. Now we have those newer spaces down at the bottom of the hill. Same number of spaces at the 20th Main?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there were 3 there before. There's 3 there now.
So
No
same
change.
same number of spaces there. What is it? 5 on Warren?
Yeah. So you're talking about the 2, we call them bump outs.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just there. We know that a lot of licensed battlefield guides would use those for auto tours and especially for bus tours. So the one on the right side as you're driving up Warren, which is from Devil's Den towards the south base of Little Round Top, the one on the right, we didn't put any lines. We didn't line it as far as...
For bus? Is it for a bus? Or?
Well, it really anybody.
Okay.
It's more of a first come, first serve. So if a bus comes up, that's a great place to pull off, because then being on the right side, folks who are on the bus can safely disembark off the road.
Okay.
So if the bus was on the left, that those folks on the bus would potentially disembark into traffic.
Right.
So safety. We're trying to make Little Round Top, because it's so popular. We know that we have to make it safe.
Sure.
But yeah, the bump out on the left, we striped 4 automobile parking, and we were able to get 5 into that space.
But that's good too, because back to the aggregate trails, by the 83rd Pennsylvania, there's a trailhead does that go all the way? It doesn't go all the way up, does it?
It does.
It does.
It does.
So it goes all the way up to the top. So you can get up that way. Mm-hmm. You don't have to walk up the road.
No.
Which you probably don't want to do, because there's a curb there now, and it's not like a curb that we're used to in town where it's kind of flush with the sidewalk or the grass or whatever's over there. It's just a curb. Right. Like what are they, like 4 or 5 inches? 6 inches off the ground.
Yep.
So you don't want to do that. I mean, you could walk over to the 20th Main position and then get up that way as well, because there's also a crosswalk now.
There's going to be.
No, there is. It's there
at the 20th Main.
The lines. No, not at the 20th Main. Crossing from the 20th Main with Chamberlain Avenue, I guess.
Oh yeah, you're talking farther up.
Mm-hmm.
Farther up.
Yeah,
yes, that is.
I'm working my way up the hill.
Oh, you're working. Yeah, you're everything. You're ahead of me.
Yeah,
you jumped ahead. Yeah, so that was one of the other safety protocols that we were able to implement. There are now 4 crosswalks on Sykes Avenue that help people get safely across, and so that automobile drivers, bus drivers, recognize that pedestrians then have the right of way.
So let me see if I remember this correctly. You have one where I just mentioned, so that would be on the south slope of Sykes Avenue.
Correct.
You have another just as you're cresting up by where the bus parking lots are, right? Mm-hmm. So you have one on the south end of the summit.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then another one on the north end of the summit.
Yep.
So that buses letting people off can let people off, and they can cross at both spots, right?
Got it. Yep.
And then another one further down, because there's bus parking further down on the north slope.
Right.
And so then they can go up the sidewalk, cross over to another sidewalk.
Yep.
Nobody has to walk in the road anymore.
No one has to walk in the road anymore.
So that's good, because I do remember, I used to run the bike tour company, and when I would go out on a tour and we'd get up there, sometimes, I mean, it was I know a term that Park Service likes to utilize. It was the Wild West, right? And it was kind of the Wild West. Like you'd have a bus that would park on the left just as you get to the top, and they'd unload people, and then some guy in a car just comes riding by, and then the guide yells at him because he almost ran over one of the visitors.
Right.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
Also, parking on the right side of the road up at the top. Now, no more automobiles up there. That's where the bus parking is, but there's a wall now, so you don't go rolling down the hill.
Right. Yeah.
So that's safer and more defined than it was before.
Oh, yeah.
Although my girlfriend and I went up, she'd never been. So we started dating after you guys closed. So she'd never been up there. And I was like, oh, let me take you up there and we'll look at the sunset and I'll sing songs to you with my mandolin. And she was very disappointed because I can't sing nor can I play the mandolin.
Is there a recording on YouTube anywhere for that?
No, I didn't have a permit.
Touche.
No, so we go up there and I had to laugh because there were 2 cars in the bus parking space right in front of the sign that says bus parking only.
Right.
And so people haven't really caught on yet, I guess, or they're so excited to be there they didn't see the signs. But there is no car parking there. That's bus parking up at the top there.
Yeah, on the left-hand side, again, the 25 automobile spaces that were there before, they're there now.
So
but the ones on the right, as you said, are now bus parking. But what you have is a nice wide 6-foot sidewalk level with a retaining wall that keeps people
that retains people.
Yeah, that first step was a doozy if you weren't careful prior to the rehab.
No, I mean, it's true. It was scary, and there's some people that are a little shaky on their feet getting off these buses and they don't have much room to stumble before they go rolling down the hill in the old days. Right. But now you don't have to worry. You got a wall that'll catch you. Oh, damn. There was something else on that note that so when, and I've been guilty of this too, when I see people commenting that there's fewer parking spaces, correct me if I'm wrong, the Park Service's view is that no, there aren't. You guys invented parking spaces. These spaces that are there are the same number of spaces that we approved from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
Now, however, we've made 5 new spaces down at the bottom of the hill.
We've made a lot of new spaces at the bottom of the hill in multiple locations.
Okay, where are some of the other ones then?
Yeah. So as you're approaching Little Round Top from the south, on South Confederate, so you've gone up and over Big Round Top, and now your next destination is Little Round Top. If you pull off to the right, even before you get to the 4-way intersection where Warren is on the left, Wright Avenue is on the right, and that's where the 20th Main is located, or you continue straight up over the hill, that's Sykes Avenue. If you pull off to the right and keep all 4 wheels on the roadway, there's plenty of room for parking up and down South Confederate between that 4-way intersection on the south slope of Little Round Top all the way up to the summit of Big Round Top. Now, what makes that useful, I think, to the visitor is that if you know you're coming and you know you want to take that new, we'll call it a trailhead, there at the 9th Pennsylvania reserves along Warren Avenue to the left, or you want to go over to the 20th Main and go up that direction, you have now 2 trailheads where you can leave your car behind. Go ahead and just park.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and park. Don't even bother going to the summit. Don't worry about trying to find a parking space on the summit because there may not be any.
Right.
There may not be.
And then you got to circle around.
Because again, Little Round Top is popular. It was then. It still is. So if you know you're going to Little Round Top and you're fully able to do so, and you want to really explore some of these new trails that are now permanent, just go ahead and park on South Confederate and use one of those 2 trailheads at the 9th Pennsylvania or the 20th Main. And then the same thing can be said over on the north side as well. A lot of folks are already familiar. There used to be a gravel parking lot on Wheatfield Road at the intersection with Sedgwick, and we expanded that. So 19 cars can now fit in that space, whereas I think that was about 8 or 9 before. It's more than doubled. But then again, you can also park on the right side of Sedgwick. So just as you can park on the right side of South Confederate, you can also park on the north side of Little Round Top on the right side of Sedgwick. Same thing, because right across the street from that gravel parking lot is a new trailhead, which actually which is a fantastic one to take, because if you know what you're looking at, you're actually walking in the original Sykes Avenue trace.
No kidding.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I knew that there was I guess a cow path or something on that end of that side of the hill that I think the 20th Maine and Hazlitt's guys took, for, at least to some degree.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I didn't know. So that was the original Sykes Avenue path.
Yeah.
Huh.
I
took it. I just didn't know that.
Yeah. And there are multiple locations up and over north side of Little Round Top, south side of Little Round Top, and even around the summit, where if you know where to look, you can basically walk the end, probably 95%, give or take, of the original trace of Sykes Avenue.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
I was not aware of that.
So that's something that some of these things that happen behind the scenes that we really haven't had a chance to talk about, that I'm really anxious to kind of get out there for the public, because this is an opportunity to not just learn about the battle, but learn about the history of the battlefield and how many changes have occurred.
Well, and I think that's important, because a lot of the comments I'll see online are people bemoaning the fact that it's different. It was always, I remember one person was like, it was always this way or whatever. And I hate to be that guy, especially online, but like I just had to step in and go, actually, it wasn't. There's plenty of pictures you can find where the road was completely different. And what you now look at as a footpath was actually the road at one point. Right. And I guess that's kind of a lesson to take away from this whole thing, is that the way it was for most of our lives was not the way it was for most of the lives of the people who lived a generation or two before.
Right.
And, before those changes were made. And I'm sure people bitched about it back then too, but like, that's just how it goes. That's just life, and then like, you look at other parts of the battlefield, like where the John Burns statue is, and for my whole time coming here, he was always where he is right now. And the 14th Brooklyn was always where it was. Right. But it wasn't originally there, nor did the road go the way it goes. Right. And so, which I love that. I love that stuff. It's so fascinating to me and then, somebody tells you about it and you're like, really? And then you go and you look and you're like, how did I not see that and figure out that was a road bed at one point? And, you feel like an idiot. But I guess, so that's an interesting thing with Little Round Top, is like, this is the new facelift that it got. But it isn't the first. And it won't be the last.
By no means is this the first. I can't honestly say how many times it would have really changed since July 2nd, 1863. It's safe to say that it has changed at least 5 or 6 times, if not way more than that. Traffic used to go south.
Yeah, right.
In that area.
I know.
So the auto tour used to go from the National Cemetery to the high water mark south, and eventually got to Little Round Top and Big Round Top and went over things southbound rather than the current northbound.
And that blows my mind, because that makes no sense chronologically.
No, none.
To start at the end.
No, none whatsoever.
And go to the beginning. But like, so I'm glad that whenever that change was made, I'm glad it was made, because it makes more sense to do it the way it is now.
Sure.
I mean, I just don't know how it could have been any other way.
Yeah, I'm a fan of chronology myself, and it's like, what were they thinking?
Yeah, I don't get that. I wonder what they were thinking. So Little Round Top, though, have there been any? What would your advice be, I guess, is my question. What would your advice be to someone who hasn't come back yet, but is planning on coming back, and they're very excited that it's open? Mm-hmm. But obviously we just described, excuse me, how it's not exactly the same as it was, but it's mostly the same. But you can't use it, at least as far as parking goes. You can't use it the way you're used to using it. So one piece of advice that you gave was, park on the south or the north slope of Big Round Top, I guess, the saddle, parking the saddle there between the two round tops, or on the north face of Little Round Top at the parking lot there. But what else? I mean, if you want, let's say I'm not in the best of shape and I don't need a wheelchair or anything like that, but I certainly can't walk up the hill from a parking space, and I have to park at the top of the hill, and it's a busy Saturday. What do I do? Circle around until the space opens? I can't make a space. I can't sit there and wait because I'm going to gum up the works. I got to keep moving. Right. So just circle, or what would you recommend?
So there would be a couple things. First thing we would ask is to see what time it is. If it's between, let's say, 10 a.m. and about 2 p.m., we know for certain, due to visitation stats, that is unquestionably the busiest time of day. Try to get there before that. Try to get there later in the day. Just avoid that crush. Right. But they're right there in the middle of the day. That just because when think about it. Your average visitor comes to the visitor center first, gets oriented, maybe sees the movie in the cyclorama, maybe takes a spin through the museum. They get all the information they need from park staff, and they head out. And if they're doing things chronologically like you and I do, that's when they're going to get there. Right. Museum, visitor center, and museum opens up at 8 o'clock in the morning. And, maybe they're in and out in the first 30 minutes. They get what they need. They hit the battlefield first thing in the morning. Yeah. And they start driving around. So that first half of the battlefield takes that long. And now you're into that 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. window. So when is everyone there? 10 to 2. 10 to 2. So don't come then. Right. So it really, Matt, it comes down to just a little bit of planning. And we have an entire section on our website devoted to this kind of information. On the Gettysburg National Military Park website, and it's easy to get to because there's a link right off the homepage, is an entire section devoted to the Little Round Top rehab project. Oh, okay, good. Both when it was happening and now that it's done. And on that page, there's a frequently asked questions section that lists all of these things. Okay. Things about parking, where to go, use the trailheads at some of these satellite areas instead of trying to go back to the way it was and try to compete for a certain amount of spaces, because it was always that way. Sure. But you could always use the shoulders in the past. Yeah. You could kind of create your own space. So no matter how busy it was, you were always guaranteed to get something near the summit. Well, that's not the case because it's bad. The resource. It's bad because think about how we had to get to this point in the first place. Yeah. Why did it necessitate a nearly 2-year closure, and why did this project have to happen at all? So if you think a little bit ahead and quite frankly take advantage of some of these fantastic new trails that used to be social trails that you may have thought, well, maybe I shouldn't take this, maybe I should. If I sneak in here, no one will notice. Right. No. We want you to take these. Right. They have been completely formalized, and they allow visitors to get to everything on Little Round Top, not just the summit, the north slope, the south slope, the west slope. You can essentially follow in the footsteps of the 4th and 5th Texas as they made their charge up the hill against the 16th Michigan and eventually the 140th New York. You can walk in their footsteps. Much easier now. And this path, it's right there for you. Yeah. It's beckoning you to use it. And then when you get up to the 16th Michigan, you can take a side jaunt to a brand new monument that you probably have never been to before, ever. Right. To the Michigan sharpshooters. And the vantage point, quite frankly, from that monument, about a third of the way down the hill, is amazing. It actually is. I remember when I went up there in October of last year with Steve Sims, and he took me down to those monuments, and I remember looking back up the hill, and it gives you a different perspective of everything. And I'm a guy who likes to be put in the shoes of someone else. Like I always try to see what was it like. Yeah. I don't want to know from real experience in certain cases.
So in this case, it's certainly one of those situations. I want to just imagine, but you got to go to the spot, and then it's almost kind of scarier to imagine yourself in the 16th Michigan's position down there and imagine these Texans coming up the slope, because it's not that far.
No,
no. And so the other thing regarding that trail though is again with parking. Now Devil's Den is another popular spot. Mm-hmm. But if you can find a parking spot down there, if you struck out at the top of the hill and you have to come down and circle around again, and you see a spot open at Devil's Den, and you can make the walk.
Yeah,
make the walk.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you're able-bodied, you can again plan ahead. You can jump into and create a spot for yourself, and we're proactively suggesting that you do so on South Confederate Avenue, on Sickles Avenue, north and south slopes of the hill.
So those on South Confederate on Big Round Top, on the north face of Big Round Top that you're talking about, those aren't marked spots, are they?
No.
Okay, but you are allowed to park there as long as you keep all four wheels on the pavement.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In fact, that's really the case across the
park in general.
Yeah.
Unless it says no parking.
Unless it says no parking specifically, or in some cases there isn't room because it's actually a two-way road rather than a one-way road.
Right.
But on all the one-way roads, let's say West Confederate, you see a lot of those parking tick marks at the Virginia Memorial and the North Carolina Memorial. But that's just to get people started.
Right.
You can use the entire length of West Confederate, the entire length of South Confederate, the entire length of Sedgwick and Hancock, all the way up and down Cemetery Ridge.
Just don't park on the grass.
Just don't park on the grass. Yeah. Again, it's just a resource protection thing.
Right.
And the roads are wide enough to allow for a car to park fully on the right-hand side with all four wheels on the road, and then a car or even a bus to pass you on the left.
Yeah. You just got to leave room.
Yeah.
Common sense.
Yeah. It's common sense stuff. And if folks are planning a little bit ahead and they're able-bodied to do so, we're proactively saying, folks, take those new trails.
Right.
You're going to see stuff. You're going to experience new stuff. You're going to get a brand new perspective, and we want you to take these.
If you're a klutz like me,
you as the visitor, basically over the course of decades, told us where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
We listened to you. We put the trails in. It's formal now. Take them. Absolutely take them.
So to the people who would say that they feel that they're restricted, because I did see there are signs that say stay on the trails, right?
Yep.
So new social trails, I'm imagining the idea for this is that we don't want new social trails.
That is correct.
Okay. So, but the social trails that we've made over the last how many decades, the Park Service didn't obliterate them. They said, okay, this is where they want to go, so we're going to formalize it now.
Yes. We're
going to make it so that you can do it with ease and not worry about twisting your ankle or anything like that.
You're spot on. That's exactly right.
Which I have to commend the park for doing, because, there's sometimes a sense of, like I said to you before, that like our park is being taken from us, or we're being restricted in our use of it. And while, I mean, obviously, if they're saying stay on the trails, that is a restriction of use, but it's after the park has said, yeah, but we heard you last time, and this is what we did. So now you've got everything that you've always been used to. It's just now it's easier to get through.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, so I've only got like 15 minutes to go, so I want to get on to the next subject. So people can go, and if they have other questions, though, they can go to the website, and there's a lot of FAQs there.
Yes, there's a ton of FAQs. You can also see lots of pictures from the rehab project.
You have before and afters.
Before and after stuff. Yeah,
which I thought that was good on the ribbon cutting. And I think, are they still up? Or they? Yeah. So there are these pictures at the head of each trail that shows you what it looked like before, and then now you can look at the same view now and see the difference, and it is a nice difference.
Yeah, I think there's 5 at 5 strategically placed locations that makes it really easy for the visitor to see and understand what it used to look like and how bad it was compared to now.
One thing I wanted to ask, and then we'll move on. The 20th Maine position. One of the things that I loved about it, and I think a lot of other people did too, is, we always hear, especially when referring to McPherson's Woods, we always hear about, well, back then you could see all the way through because there was no underbrush. And the 20th Maine position was a great spot to get an idea of what that looked like, because people had trod wherever they wanted to, and there was no underbrush. And I think, I'm assuming, because if I recall, I do remember it being more grown up on the slope in front of their position prior to the clearing of the last 20 years.
Right.
But I noticed when I was back up there taking some video that the underbrush outside of the 20th Maine position, like right in front of them, in front of the monument, seems to have grown up again. Are there plans to clear that, or are we letting that go back to nature?
That actually gets, and I don't know how much time you want to spend on this, but
like 2 minutes.
2 minutes. We have just recently hired a full-time volunteer coordinator.
Okay.
Brand new position that hasn't existed for many years.
Good.
And she will be bringing back programs that a lot of folks miss.
Oh.
But they'll be better.
Good.
Instead of it just being, let's say, one small area, you as a group may have the potential to take care of an entire orchard or an entire farm or an entire road.
Now, is it going to be, I think you're referring to what used to be called the Adopt a Position program.
Right.
Obviously, it's different. Is it going to be where, let's say, Addressing Gettysburg can adopt an area, or is it going to be, hey, we need help doing this at this location and we're looking for volunteers, come on out?
I think a lot of those details are still to be worked out because of the logistics on our side.
Okay.
Because we still will be providing all the tools. We'll still be providing all the stuff necessary to do whatever work needs to be done. So there's still a lot of details to work out, but we're going bigger. We're going, instead of just helping one monument in one area that can be measured in square feet as opposed to square acres, we're going bigger so that the work that folks want to do on the behalf of the park, you're going to be able to do it. We just don't have the details just yet, but we're working on that. And the first step was to hire a permanent person.
Sure.
And she just stared, I want to say, a week ago.
Okay. Well, I'll give her some time to get into the position, and then I'll have her on and we'll talk about that. When you guys are ready to start with that, maybe you and her can come on and
we'd love to.
We can talk about it more. Okay. So another big thing that's been in the socials has been the issue of permits, and of course, listeners of the show know that yours truly was called to the principal's office and told that he has to do permits for the Get Out of the Car tour, special use permits. And we're going to eventually figure out a way to do that. But a lot of, and I told you this before, and I'll say it on the show too, that I am on both sides of the fence on this because I've been personally affected by it.
Right.
So there's a little bit of, I'll be honest, resentment there.
Sure.
But at the same time, I've been very fortunate to have a good relationship with the Park Service, and everybody that I know over there is very happy to explain to me when I ask them, how things work, because I like to know how things work and I like to know the why of things. That's why I was a big pain in the butt to all my teachers in school, was because they would tell me to do something, and my parents, and I would say, why? Not because I was being obstinate or stubborn or anything like that. I want to know why, because then it's easier for me to do it. Because I understand how what I'm doing fits into the bigger picture.
I think I'm similar in that way.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be hard on anybody, but that's what it is. So I want to know the why of it. And the park, everybody I talk to at the park has always been very quick to answer my questions and to a satisfactory level. So I then also find myself, once in a while going online and I'm going to defend the park, even though the raw human being in me might agree with the comment that I see. One of the common comments I see, and I'm not going to name any names of groups or anything, but there was something on the Facebook recently, a day or two ago, or I don't know when it was posted, but I saw it today, with a certain group that comes here and kind of, has like I call it a pilgrimage type of a thing where they follow in the footsteps of a certain unit or whatever.
Yep.
And they had to get a permit to do it. And the reaction, much like when I told my audience that we can't do our tours, because of this stuff, is why all of a sudden this new regulation. And I explained to them that this is not a new regulation. It's actually an old regulation. What's new is the enforcement of it. Go into that a little bit. Explain a little bit more from the Park Service's perspective so that people kind of understand what's going on.
So in the case of what happened recently, and this really gets back to, as you said, that it's rules that have been on the books for a long time. And we at Gettysburg are in a position where a lot of folks want to do these kinds of things, whether it be as a group, as an individual, for lots of different reasons. And the federal government has rules and regulations in place to handle pretty much almost any of this. But in some cases it is somewhat difficult to put the square peg in the round hole. And we're more than happy to work with groups. And in certain cases, when a group wants to do, let's say, a certain march across the battlefield to walk in the footsteps of a given Confederate or Union regiment, we want to accommodate that as best as possible because we understand the connection, the connection to the place, the connection to the resource, the connection to the ground, the very hallowed ground. And in certain cases, we have to ask groups or individuals to follow rules only because it's best for the resource. And by what I mean by that is, instead of taking your group from point A to point B, you might need to pass between Gettysburg National Military Park ground, something that we administer and have authorization over, and then you leave and go into private property, and then come back into federal property, cross over one of the many streams, which also isn't part of the legal elements of the park. Again, it's resource protection. And then want to continue marching, hiking in a certain direction and maybe go over a stone wall that has been rebuilt that cost X number of dollars. And those stone walls, when they do get rebuilt, they get rebuilt so that they last.
Right.
Because we only want to have to do this once every 20 years, every 50 years, whatever, because it's expensive to get them rebuilt. Or if your track takes you over existent remnant breastworks, defensive positions. So all of these things fall into categories where when a permit is submitted, we take a look at it and work with that individual, work with that group to make sure that what they want is as close as we can get it for them, but it also falls within the legal space, the space that isn't going to be potentially harmed.
Okay.
So a lot of people going over stone walls, a lot of people going over wooden fences, a lot of people walking over remnant breastworks, coming in and out of the federal jurisdiction and going on private property. These are all the things that we want to work with a person or group so that that group or person gets that experience as close as possible. But in certain cases, we need groups and people to think about the long-term usage of a given location. And if we allow it for one group, then we have to allow it for everybody.
Right.
And so we can't set a precedent that way, because then that opens a floodgate.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in certain cases, we have another little round top where we have to shut down a certain area for a given amount of time and spend a given amount of money.
Right.
Those are things we don't want to do. So instead, we ask that folks stay to paved areas, mowed areas, or mowed paths. And you can see this across the fields of Pickett's Charge. You can see this in a lot of different places across the battlefield. And it's not just rules for the public, it's rules for everybody.
Including the Park Service.
Including us.
Right.
We have to abide by our own rules.
Sure.
Chris Gwynn. A lot of folks
met him a couple times.
A lot of folks on here know Chris Gwynn. One of the things that he stipulates in the planning leading up to the battle anniversary, for instance, and just use that as one case, Rangers have to plan their battle walks around roadways, mowed pathways, and existing trails. They cannot create new stuff.
Right. Let's just go through the woods.
No.
Yeah.
It is, the other thing to consider is there are a bunch of agricultural leases across the battlefield. So farmers have active crops. So that's another thing. We don't want to have groups or even individuals traipsing through cropland where they're expecting a certain harvest.
Right.
And all of a sudden, this half acre gets mowed down by, this isn't the cornfield at Antietam,
right,
or the wheat field at Gettysburg.
Right.
We want them to have their crops. That's the whole point.
Sure.
Plus, there are also active pastures with horses and cows at both Gettysburg and Eisenhower. So when you take all of those things into consideration, we are more than happy to work with an individual or a group and meet them halfway. So in some cases, depending on what the route is, maybe their entire route is perfect. Mm-hmm. And there's no changes, no suggestions, nothing. It goes off without a hitch. In some cases, we need to tweak it a little bit more.
So when someone, and I do have to wrap it up here. I'm sorry, we went right up to the moment here where I have a dinner reservation. But
You're important.
I'm very important.
You're very important
to myself. The process for a permit, though, it's not like if I decide on Wednesday, you know what I'd like to do tomorrow? I'd like to get 30 of my closest friends and go across Pickett's Charge, but, straight across, where there isn't a path, let's say.
Right.
I can't apply for it Wednesday afternoon and expecting approval by Thursday. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, well, there's a 30-day turnaround.
Okay, so you got to plan ahead.
You got to plan ahead.
And I'm assuming that's any permit that you need to get.
Correct.
Right. So for anybody out there who's thinking of doing something, you've got to give yourself time. You can't just do it on a whim. There's a very good chance that you could hear back from the park saying, yes, but you can't go here. So you got to change this part of your route, right? Mitigations, I think they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, I hate to cut this short, but you're going to come on periodically to do updates on these. And when we get our computer back in order, we're going to do them as live streams and maybe take questions from the audience or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm happy to come back.
Great. It's great to have you. I always enjoy talking to you. Thank you very much for your time. And I hope I didn't take up too much of it.
No.
You're off the clock now, right?
I've been off the clock for a while, but hey, thankfully you have a dinner reservation. So.
Yeah, I know. We would have gone till 9:00. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, you can send them in to me. I can forward them to Jason, or you can go check out their FAQ page. Or how could people? Do you want people to email you, or do you want to?
You can go straight to Matt. He can get information to me, or you can also just email the park.
Yeah,
there's an email us at the bottom of every single web page. And I think the address is superintendent. No, I'm sorry.
No.
GETT, short for Gettysburg, GETT_superintendent at nps.gov. That's the park-wide email. And
then it'll get to whoever needs to answer the question.
Then it gets to whoever it needs to and gets directed to the right people.
Perfect. That's it for us today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. I hope this helped to inform you, and we will talk to you next time. All right. Thanks, Jason.